Welcome to Roxalana. I'm here with Estian Coetzer joining us for our discussion today. We're going to have a good talk, a casual conversation, if you will, about video games and D&D, aka Dungeons and Dragons, as a creative outlet. So let's go. What's your take on video games as a creative pastime? What's your experience to it as well? I mean, we should probably give a little bit of background. We're both gamers. He's more of a gamer than me.
So I guess I'll start with how I got into gaming. Growing up, we moved around quite a bit. We lived, most of Canada, and we lived in South Africa. I was born in Fiji. There's a lot of areas that we lived, but for the first parts of my life, obviously we weren't into gaming that much because we didn't have the cash, we didn't have the money, and most of the time, the games that we would be into were kind of smaller games like Game Boy. Game Boy was a big thing for me and my brother, but
and computer games as well. And we were in the days of communal computers.
Yes.
I know, one computer per family.
That's right. Yeah, actually, I know. It started all off with Game Boy, now that I think about it. I think the first Game Boy game that I really got into was, and this is Game Boy Color, was Pokemon Silver. And that was the first time my brother and I got something to game that was our own. Was that. He had a green Game Boy Color, and I had one of those purple see-through ones. The traditional,
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, the retro kind.
Yeah.
And I got super into Pokemon Silver and played almost the full game through, and I remember having a Mew and having the starter Pokemon was I chose the fire one.
Charmander.
No, this was Typhlosion.
Okay, right. Yes, I was thinking Silver is not one of the first ones.
Yeah, we never actually went, we never had a gaming system when.
That surprises me about you.
That my first was.
That was Silver, yeah, because I was like, that's definitely a later one. I mean, I watched
the videos and everything, like the movie and the.
Everyone did, okay.
So I knew all about it, but Silver, so.
Yeah.
Which has its own iconic parts in it, but I really liked the Lugia character, and that's why I went for that one. My brother went for gold, so we both had this. And if you know that about Pokemon, they have the two different versions of the same game. One with different Pokemons than the other. So, or
Pokemans, if you will. Pokemon, if you will. The plural form, the proper.
So yeah, he had his Pokemon game and I had mine. And I remember I really wanted him to, get farther in his game so that we could trade for the Pokemon that I'm missing. But that never happened. And I guess I just got really into it. And I remember, this is a testament to how strong or well built the gaming platforms were of the past. I remember losing my Game Boy on the way to school, and I was so distraught and sad because I'd spent a lot of time on that game.
Oh yeah, totally. That's heartbreaking.
So I went for a couple months without it, and then one day walking to school again, I looked in the gutter and I saw this purple thing just lying in the ice.
And then you saw this clown come out.
That was the gutter back there.
This is the okay gutter.
Yeah, I went to the right gutter. And that's my Game Boy was just sitting right there in the ice, just frozen over.
And you're sick.
So I'm sure. So I picked it up, put it
in some rice?
Well, probably. I remember putting in new batteries and it booted up and my saved files were there and everything. So
it was a gamer's miracle.
It was a gamer's miracle.
One could say.
That was my gamer's miracle. That got me.
Every gamer has their miracle, their miracle day, and that was yours. That's beautiful. That was honestly such a beautiful story.
Thank you. I practiced.
I rehearsed before coming here.
But, that was my first endeavor into gaming. And after that, we went over to South Africa. And there, I remember us having our first home computer really that we were allowed to go on. And surprisingly, I was able to convince my parents that they can get me World of Warcraft. And that started off my long...
And that was the gateway.
That was the gateway to the rest of the games. Yeah, World of Warcraft was my second like big interest in games, and I still play it like up until now. And this was years ago.
This is true. I can
Probably
attest to this.
Yeah, probably grade 6, grade 5 when I started, and like whenever it started, I got it right when it was vanilla, and yeah, I played all the way through up until now. So another testament to how long a game can last. It's like a story that
it's a saga of your life.
Yeah, some people talk about the books that they follow for years, like the Harry Potter series or
That's true.
And this was my Harry Potter series. So.
I'm gonna put that idea in my back pocket and
put that in the parking lot.
Put that in the parking lot. Back it up in the garage. It'll come out in a second.
Yeah.
But I guess I should give my background to gaming as well. Wow. Okay. No. You know what? Fine. Let's keep this gaming history going.
Well, that was when we had shared computers, right?
Yes.
So I only could play for like an hour or 2 hours at a go.
Yeah.
And actually back then, I had a double foot operation that I had to go through, where I was in a wheelchair for 6 months. And basically, whenever I couldn't do anything, that would be what I would do. Because, like, what am I supposed to go outside and play?
Yeah, you can't do anything.
You can't do very much in a wheelchair when you're used to playing, like,
sports
and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Well, and it'd be pretty isolating, because everyone else is, like, doing that, and you're like, I can't go anywhere.
South Africa is definitely not wheelchair accessible. So
no, yeah.
That was another part.
It's like a whole new level.
Yeah, so
layer, I should say.
Became, another outlet for myself. And then, after living in South Africa for a bit, we ended up moving back to Canada, and that's when we got our own computers. And from there, basically, I would play as much as I could get my hands on, which wasn't much. I mean, I didn't make a ton of money that I could spend on games or stuff like that, but I would, get as much as I could, or get into the games that I did have. And I remember playing games like Halo, World of Warcraft still through that time. Diablo was another one, and we played a lot of like shooters, and funny enough, free versions of shooters that me and a bunch of friends would end up doing LAN parties for to play.
Ooh, LAN parties.
Yeah. And yeah, that was when I was in high school, and then in university when I was able to start making a bit of money. That's when I got really into all sorts of different gaming, like StarCraft, a lot of RPG games. I forgot back when we moved back the first time from South Africa that we had a Nintendo 64. So
yes, you played Mario, right?
I played Mario, Zelda, Super Smash Bros. We had a GameCube at that point too that we got once that one came out. We got the GameCube when this PlayStation came out because my mom thought it was a nicer console, not as violent. So we got that one. So
I'm going to put that idea in my back pocket as well. Park that car beside that other car. Okay.
So the Nintendo was a big part of, my childhood. So. And then, high school, started getting into the more PC games. And then in university, I was able to afford building my own computer. So then I went ahead and did that, and just that became a hobby. And then along with building a computer, you got to test your computer. So played all the high-level games, and now we're at where my Steam library is like
LePac.
100 games.
100 games.
Yeah, at least 100 games.
I've built my gaming empire.
And now regularly I play with a buddy of mine who, we play, every week or so. And, we've got very much into cooperative games. And, for some reason, I much rather like the cooperative games than the competitive games. And it's like I don't like shooters. I don't like games like that too much. I mean, I like Borderlands and those kind of co-op.
Yeah, but they're still co-ops, yeah.
But shooters in themselves, I don't like those too much. But then saying that, we got into RoboCraft the other day, which is a competitive game, but it's also
cooperative.
has a cooperative stand
Yes,
from it.
there is an element of that in there. So I guess now can I go over my small history of gaming?
Yeah, you can go over it. I'll allow it.
Thank you, sir. So gaming for me was, I guess, a little bit more complicated. I couldn't quite get that gateway the same way you could. So video games were a big no-no for me and my family. I was never allowed to like get a Game Boy or any sort of gaming console, anything like that. It was just, it was banned. It was just banned, contraband right there. But I really, really liked gaming. So all of my friends that had some sort of console and game, I'd play with them. So I got to play some Zelda and like my best buddy Steph. We would go, when I had a car, we would go drive to her house at lunch and we'd play like Call of Duty and like Red Dead Redemption and stuff like that. And Halo, a bit of Halo, but I didn't really get into it like Halo too much. Call of Duty was great though. But yeah, now that, well, I had that sort of like, it was very, very scattered how much exposure I could have. And I played a lot of like computer games, but they're very different from video games in like complexity.
What kind of computer games? Like online games?
Yeah, like online games, like, you know, the classic like addictinggames.com sort of thing. Yeah, it's just, it's different. It's not, you don't have quite the same level of like coordination you need because like it's just not as complex. You just use a few buttons on your keyboard and that's it.
Yeah.
But
benefit, but
oh, totally. I mean, I'm pretty good at some games there, but
I know your robot unicorn attack was one.
I killed it on that one. But anyway, yeah, so I didn't really get into it too much. And because, you know, as the years go by and people get to grow their game repertoire and get to be able to play more and more, the fact that I wasn't being able to play as much made me want to play less and less because I was feeling really outside of the loop and I wasn't really feeling part of this thing I wanted to be a part of and just had no ability to access it. So that I found just like was psychologically hindering because, you know, you want to be good at it and you don't feel like you're at the same level as everyone else, then you just don't really feel like you're part of the game.
Yeah, that's a tough part of gaming is definitely, I mean, it's kind of like sports too, right?
Yeah, it's a skill, yeah.
But yeah, it's something that you can get, that gaming actually uniquely can get away from as well. Like if you're in a sports team, yeah, you can play rec league, but even some people are a lot better in rec league than what you would be if you first started off or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And like now that, you know, I'm with Game Boy Jenkins over here, I've been playing a lot more. Like we play this game called RoboCraft, which is great. You got to build your own robot and it's basically like robot, like bot battles or whatever. Like
yeah, it's a 5-on-5.
Back in the day YTV special of like yeah, bot battles. I don't remember what it's called.
A lot more kind of like Gundam, but like a lot less cool.
Yeah. It's fun though, it's good. And then I've also been playing a ton of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Phenomenal game.
Yeah.
But I have actually, because I can say I've had a break from games and now that I'm going back into gaming in a much bigger way than I've ever been able to do, there is definitely, you get a lot out of gaming. That is something that I don't think, there's this strange dialogue around gaming, how, you know, it's responsible for obesity and social isolation and violence, like, and like obsessive behavior and like all these sort of really negative attributes when really none of that is actually supported by any studies. If you look up any studies with video games, there's so much cognitive benefits, therapeutic benefits to it. There's actually a lot of social benefits to it as well, problem solving, abstract thinking, and it's great for all age groups, for children, for adults, for elderly, especially elderly. It really helps with, preventing Alzheimer's and being able to give that mental stimulation
even
in a complex way.
Yeah, and even in a social standpoint. I mean, in a video game, it's a lot like, nobody knows who's behind the character, right? So there's a lot less judgment on who,
Use like a person.
Yeah, you as a person. Like, for example, World of Warcraft, you can have a character there who looks like the character next to him, where one guy is a, 75-year-old person who's getting into gaming again, and the other person's a 10-year-old who just started playing. Like,
yeah.
You can, and,
yeah,
they
the
have to
ageism.
and
No
type,
ageism
yeah,
can be in there, right?
to type to each other. They've got to cooperate.
Yes.
There are games that kind of allow for more of or less social interaction, but I mean, that's like anything, right?
But there's a
games
spectrum.
There's
a huge spectrum of games that are out there. Like, there's storytelling sort of games, strategy games. There's, shooter games. There's, what else? What else is a good genre of game?
So you put strategy. I mean, even in strategy, there's so much. You've got
RPG.
real time, so like StarCraft. You've got
there's so many.
Turn-based,
Yeah.
you've got,
Yes.
MOBA, which is like a 5-on-5 kind of battle. There's there's everything so shooters, even you got cooperative shooters. You got
and like your coordination. You need really great coordination.
Reaction time.
Absolutely.
Mental processing, strategizing.
Making very quick
learning
decisions, yeah.
There's a lot of learning that goes into gaming.
Absolutely.
Like an intense amount, especially those higher end games, the games that require more time spent. They require a lot of sitting down and figuring something out.
Absolutely. Yeah, like coming from, being more of like a new gamer that doesn't have that like gamer intuition, that developed third eye of gamers. It's a skill. And like the way that you have to think and the way that you have to logic it out. When I first started playing, I remember when I first started playing Zelda by myself, there were so many points where I just felt lost. And I was like, what am I supposed to do right now? And like, where am I going? And like, it was just like difficult to just like coordinate. Okay, let's jump again. How do I do this? What do I do to that combo so I can like surf on my shield? Like It was just a lot to process and handle. And like, where do I go to this person? Who am I supposed to go right now?
Yeah.
Where do I go and like look at my shrine logs and all this stuff? Yeah, what does this quest mean? There's this riddle I don't understand. As I played more, it's like your memory gets so much better. The way you understand how to logic something is so much better. I don't have to think about, I don't even realize which button I'm actually pressing because I just know what I want to do. It's like simultaneous jump, and I know exactly what to do to dump. It's like, it's not like, okay, gotta do this now.
Yeah.
And
it's like when we were gaming, you're like, what's the button to do this? And I'm like, X, I think.
Yeah, exactly. You don't even know because you're like, it's so like, it's almost intuitive. Like it just becomes another part of you. It's just like moving your hand to go this way. You don't go, move it there and like think about that. You just do it, right? And I think for people who haven't played video games and to say that, they're a waste of time and they're just, there's just this like addictive sort of like brain melting activity, like sit them down and make them play a video game. And like, you will see very clearly that there is skill involved. There's a huge learning curve and there is something to learn. Yeah. If it was something that was just a mindless activity, then anyone could pick it up and do just as well as the person who plays it all the time.
Yeah, and I mean, like how big was the push against TV when that first came out? Like people were like, oh, that's, vegetative state. You're doing nothing. This is zero benefit to society, et cetera, et cetera. But, it can be used for, learning, a lot of documentaries on Netflix, a lot of
dispensive of information in general, yeah.
And the same goes with gaming. Like at first you can look at it and you can call it waste of time, escapism completely, and not beneficial to society. But there is a lot that gets conveyed through video games that is actually very beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. And what was the point I wanted to bring up? Yes, it's this, I think there's this really, I mean, you see it over and over again, any sort of change, especially if it's something that's like very out there, kind of abstract because it's never really existed before. Whenever you have these sort of advancements in technology or anything like that, there's always this immediate feeling of negativity towards it because it is something that's so foreign to people, and they immediately look at it and go like, this is bad because, you know, I would run around and play and beat my brother with a stick, and that's what I'm used to doing, and I think that's great.
Yeah.
But to see them just, like my grandkids, just sit on a couch and they're not doing anything like that. Yeah, they're not beating each other with sticks. They're beating each other with sticks on a virtual like platform. This is so different.
Yeah.
You know, I can't relate to this, and because I can't relate to this, it has this unknown factor that kind of makes me apprehensive. And if I'm not I don't have a reason to be open to the concept, then I think that's when we get those really negative attributes like, oh, you know, it's a shooter. They're violent. You know, this is violence. This is springing violence into my kid, or this is doing that, or whatever. And like, you know, with like movies and stuff, people say the same thing. But we're a little bit more complacent about that now because we're used to it. Films, it's not an odd thing anymore. And I think gaming has a very particular demographic. It's catered towards. So it is. It completely is. Like, I definitely feel that when I'm in games, I'm like, I'm a minority here. Like, I'm the outlier. And I can tell this was not made with my sort of preferences and ideas in mind, which is fine. But for how much I believe that anyone can enjoy gaming, I think that like video games, we should be expanding the audience. And I think that is actually a reason why we have this negative perception, because we think of young boys or young adult men.
Yeah.
That's what we view video games to be towards, which really is a small portion of the whole, of all people, I guess.
Yeah, the population.
Yes, so a lot of people, I know that I'm not necessarily encouraged to game. I don't have that sort of view of like, oh, you're just as much of a legitimate member of the gaming community as like, let's say you.
Yeah.
Or that I could actually be just as good as you and just as interested in gaming as you, you know. And if I do show that, I'm kind of like, oh, you're like an exception to the rule.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's true coming from having that break in gaming. It has this intimidation factor, right? And especially because there is a level of skill you need. Like, you don't feel as comfortable flailing around and doing poorly when you're already trying to kind of like fight for like validity in your interest in this, right?
And that is something that's been a big issue with gaming. I mean, you can even see in programming in general. Like, there's a lot of male-dominated fields in gaming specifically. But I think with the rising popularity of games to basically anybody, that is starting to be broken down.
Yes.
And and what you require is more people taking part in this in order to break down those walls. Like, if your games are then catered towards the population rather than part of the population, obviously you're going to be bringing in more of those individuals that were originally not encouraged to get into gaming.
Or didn't even really from the outside see a place for them. Like, even if someone who was, you know, elderly and was like, yeah, you know what, I can see how this would be good for, you know, like, I'm in a home, whatever, and I want something that's stimulating, that, you know, I can sit down, I don't have to like move around or do anything like that, but like it's, you know, it'd be stimulating to me. I don't want to play Sudoku all the time. Exactly. Like, I want to do this. Well, you know, from the outside, you're like, but none of these games interest me. None of them are what I would want to do. None of them are catered to kind of my speed, what interests me, my visual appeals, something I can connect to. And I think that can really discourage that sort of idea that video gaming is actually something that could be hugely beneficial to everyone at every stage of their life.
And actually, on that point, just from the gaming, like from a player standpoint, that's true. I'm thinking that used to be the case too with developers for games. But, you know, if you look at Steam, which is a major gaming library that keeps your games online, your ownership of games online. There is more and more developers who are amateurs coming out on that platform every single day. And a lot like how art is benefiting from a digital kind of landscape and being able to be
the accessibility
broadcasted to everybody. Gaming is starting to get the same way. Like
yes,
you're starting
definitely.
to get developers who are able to put out the game that they want to put out and create. You're getting, without the requirement of backing from a large company that's going to want to basically just market to the demographic they're comfortable with.
Yes.
Right? 'Cause that's where
they don't want to make risk. They're like, I know we're going to make a killing off of this. So why would we branch out?
And like power to them. That's
totally
that's
fine.
What you're allowed to, but what's happening now is that that gatekeeper is now less of an importance in this world. I mean, like I have some games from big developers, but I'd say a large quantity of the games I have are alpha games. Alphas are paid testing.
Yes,
right. So
that's very true.
I pay for the game, help support the developer, and if I really like it, they get to develop more. They have, and I'm willing to spend my money in that way because it's in support of people who are ultimately wanting to create games that are beneficial and fun and interesting and not
different
games that are dominated by pay-to-win strategies or loot box strategies or stuff like that.
Yeah, those are the worst.
So I think the field in gaming, obviously started off innocently, became a kind of a gaming, or became a cash cow kind of industry, and now it's starting to focus more on individualism and expression of that art.
Yes, and I think because it started off that way, there is that stigmatization around it it's still working to be broken, but is totally different. Like this kind of goes back to one of our first discussion on my first episode on the benefits of having as many individuals as possible to express their creativity, right? That's how you're getting that totally new, interesting range of games, is because we have a platform that allows more people to participate on it and create things. Like you had one of the games that kind of went viral, like Doki Doki.
Oh yeah.
And that was a really, I thought it was a very unusual one. That's not a typical game that really gets out there, and it was wild, and it was so interesting.
It was.
And it was so emotionally intense.
Yeah, and jarring.
Yeah, jarring. That's exactly the word I wanted to use. So
very unexpected.
Very unexpected. Yes, I love the twist in it, but it felt it created an impact. I thought about that game after it was done.
Yeah.
You
think about the characters and you think about the
world. Because the one thing that I'm gonna take that car out of the garage when you brought out Harry Potter and people having their sort of series that they kind of grow up with and have throughout their life. Gaming is there's a lot of games out there which are essentially immersive books. Where you are now such an active participant, and a lot of games, you actually put your input of decisions. What are you going to do here? Like Walking Dead, I've played that one. You make decisions, and your decisions have consequences and change the game and change how characters interact with you and who interacts with you, and how the plot develops. That's really cool. And most people would say, reading is super great, but gaming doesn't have that same sort of reverence, but it's why not? When you see what it really is, a lot of games are like that, and they go on for so long too. Yeah.
Even Breath of the Wild has aspects of that.
So much.
You've got plenty of games out there that are they tout their their quality of game directly attached to how well they are able to immerse you and create an environment that's specifically catered towards how you played your character. And I remember one of the games I used to play that was Fable. Fable was a big game that when it first came out, I bought it and I loved it. It was such a great game. I had two characters I remember. One, I decided, I played as I would, and if you played like as a very good character, you ended up getting a halo around your head, and everybody liked when you came around, and they wanted to come talk to you.
I know this is the strategy that you picked.
And then the other character literally had like demon horns growing out the front of his head because he was so evil.
Yeah.
He made every decision that was like, he like killed those innocent people for their money, or he did that kind of stuff. And like, I honestly hated playing that character. I didn't want to play it.
Yeah, I know.
But,
I know you.
Like, it shows you and how people interact with you in the game is exactly the same way. Like, they would interact with you depending on what you chose in your gaming, and you'd have to overcome whatever bias was to either side or the other.
Yes.
And that was a very interesting way to play games too, because you had to see what it meant to play in those different kind of mental views, right? And and that helps you to develop a consequence kind of
concept of consequences, because your decisions made a real effect on the gameplay.
Yeah, and how easy or hard it was.
Yes.
As well. And
totally.
Your reward versus your investment in time.
Absolutely. And like, one thing I really enjoy with gaming is the satisfaction of building something. And like, it's so goal oriented, and it could be like goals within goals within goals. And like, keeping track of all of that and putting it all together, and like having that like one step here, and all these things are like little actions, but then they create this whole bigger like, whoa, look at how much progress I made, which is very reflective of real life goal setting.
And on that note too, there are games out there that have blown up with kids, specifically kids, that are so valuable, I think, to these kids, and we don't know or don't realize how valuable they are. One specific example would be Minecraft. Like,
yes.
Minecraft is a game you're dropped into, and that's it. You're shown how to mine something. You're shown how to pick up a dirt block and
show the mechanics.
Yeah, you're shown the mechanics of how your character moves and operates within this world. But there's zero goals. You don't have. There are some things that you can do, but majority of the players don't even do those things.
Yeah.
They sit around and they create little worlds for themselves. They create houses that have trapdoors. They create. I remember seeing on the news the other day. There's a guy who, a kid of 12 years old, I think.
Oh, he made a calculator or something, right? Yeah.
Because the game has an electric.
Yeah, it's like circuits and everything else. Yeah.
So he created a fully functioning calculator with logic and relay logic and all that kind of stuff, using a game that's geared towards children.
Yeah. And he was a child.
He was a child.
Yeah.
And
phenomenal learning. I want to kind of bring up another point. I was a Neopets fiend. Like,
yeah, that's right.
Fiend. And one of my favorite things I actually really like doing is I made guilds. And I actually taught myself at 11 how to write HTML coding. So I can create all sorts of layouts, and like I could remember all the hex codes for all the different colors and everything else, and like I could literally type out HTML. A web page, because of gaming. I had that sort of goal, that interest where I want to figure that thing out. If you told me learn coding, I'd be like, I'm never going to do that. Like, it's just but to put that target of something that interests me, suddenly, and this is not a unique case, like, kids will learn really highly complex things through gaming.
Exactly, because it's got goals that you yourself set, and therefore you're gonna value them higher than other goals.
Absolutely,
right? Like when I built my own world in Minecraft, I would spend hours, working on this world and create something that was spectacular, and then I'd go online and read a headline saying that kids' attention spans are reducing by a huge amount every day.
Yeah.
Well, I just spent 3 hours focused intently on a game. How is that in line with the? And this isn't a unique case either.
Oh, absolutely.
Kids are spending hours doing.
I mean,
games.
I like 2 nights ago spent literally like 5 hours straight on Zelda, like trying to find memories and stuff. And I was just like, holy, like, is it already that time?
And
like,
I realize we're not children, but you go and ask your kids to show you them, like if your kids play Minecraft, ask them to show you their Minecraft world.
Yeah.
And you will see the amount of effort, the amount of actual interesting.
And the excitement of like, let me explain this thing to you. Or even like any game, show me your character or whatever, like tell me how this game works.
Yeah.
And they will like talk your ear off.
Because they've spent so much time thinking about it, like, planning about it outside and inside the game, like
strategizing.
There's a lot of mental development that goes along with gaming, and we've been doing it for ages. It's just now we're able to do it in a
new
much
platform.
platform. Yeah,
absolutely. It's the platform change. Games have been around forever. Literally ever since we could put piles of rocks and like count them and play with one another. Like that's like that was the first game. I cannot remember what it was called. It was like. It sounds kind of like, it's like Mancala or something. I don't remember. But it's like apparently the oldest game in history.
There's chess, there's checkers, there's Sudoku. Those are all, single or double player games. But now we have games that play with millions of players at the same time.
Exactly.
Like World of Warcraft, for example. When I played World of Warcraft, I loved playing with friends that I've met and like that I know my friends. But one of our friends had a friend that they had been playing World of Warcraft for ages, that lived in Chicago or in Chicago. Yeah. And they'd been playing. They know each other. That was a source of friendship for them. Yeah, and which was that they couldn't necessarily have found in their own town. And with a world becoming more globalized, those kind of relationships are very important. And I actually know someone who met their husband through World of Warcraft. Oh, yeah. And actually, they met through World of Warcraft, and they're married. Yeah. And like, so to say that there isn't that sort of social component is totally false. Yes, because we're from Toronto, and most of our friends are from there and everything else. And being here, gaming has allowed us to connect with our friends in a virtual platform that's really cooperative and creative, and is this sort of a joint escape. Let's all escape into this place together and hang out, and then go back to our regular lives. And it's such a refreshing thing to be able to do, to have that sort of place of escape, because that's another thing I think that gets bad rep. It's viewed as this like escapism, like this unhealthy escapism. And because it's really all about you, right? All these goals that you attain and all these things that you do, at the end of the day, is to satisfy yourself, right? You're not, whatever you did in that game isn't gonna have some sort of like direct, real world sort of effect. And that's why I think there's a lot of this idea of like, it's a waste of time. But I don't think those pursuits are a waste of time at all. I think taking that time, I think it's a form of self-care in a way. It really is. It is. It's the same thing as people learning how to woodwork or learning how to do something for themselves. Yeah. They don't sell it, they don't do anything, they just do it because they love it, right? And I think that gaming should be viewed in that way, where it's just this thing that's for you. And I mean, to kind of bring it back into the art scope, like gaming has some of the most like beautifully immersive art. Like it's amazing. Like with Zelda, the world that they made is beautiful. Like it's literally beautiful. I'll just ride my horse through like all the different places just for the scenery and the music and everything else. Well, it's so nice. What's interesting about it too is there's so much to that art as well, because if you wanted to make the most photorealistic game possible, well, you couldn't do it on that DS. Yeah. You have limitations by the system and the technical components. Yeah. So those people who create these games with like the artists themselves have to then also scale their art to what the capabilities of the machines are. That is a very technical thing. Yes, very technical. Very, traditionally very sciencey kind of thing that you wouldn't necessarily think an artist would jump into. But a lot of these digital artists are very, very competent with that. Oh, wow. Yeah. Digital artists, they have
like huge proficiencies with technology, and it's just like it's pretty amazing the kind of work that they're capable of doing. Yeah, no, I think that like the art that is actually within gaming is totally underrated because it is like, it's awing. And like the music, the everything, it's great. And like the creativity of the characters that are built as well, where it's like, that's such an interesting concept, or like that's such a cool aesthetic looking character. Like you've created this whole world with different races and places, and you know there's and there's like political sort of scenarios and like, you know, tribes and wars, and you know there's different plants, and you can like virtual cooking, put things together, and you know, create like just create little things in games, and like there's so much in gaming.
Yeah, it's such a valuable art form that you can interact with as a person outside of that art form as well.
Yes.
And the value from gaming itself is more and more so useful for how we live today as well.
Yes.
I mean, the whole cops and robbers kind of games that people played when they were a kid, or you know, throwing sticks at each other, or playing all sorts of imaginary games where you're out in the forest with your friends. Those were very useful too. But you know, now in an ever increasing digital world, being competent with digital things is a huge
asset. Huge asset.
Every job pursuit that you're asking for. And this doesn't have to be computer science or something like that.
Well, not even just jobs as well, like just everyday interactions, and like being able to keep up with the technological advancements.
Finding deals online, or using that one phone app to help you keep your budgets in line, or using that other, you know.
And being able to utilize technology to the fullest that we can. And it's a big deal if you can't. You're really missing out if you can't. And I think that gaming is a great, just like how I was able to teach myself HTML through a game, you know, it's through gaming that I think we can develop these skills around technology as well, because you have something fun to bring you there.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that.
So I want to bring, because I mentioned D&D at the beginning, Dungeons and Dragons, so I want to pop that in here because we're both new to the game. We started playing, I don't know, not that long ago, a few months ago.
The beginning of the year kind of thing.
Yeah, like a few months ago now. And so that's a new sort of creative outlet that when it first came out in like 1974 had so many issues around it. It was so bizarre. It was like being associated with Satanism and like black magic and all this stuff. And again, that was like a pretend role-playing game, yet it was new, it was kind of radical, I guess.
It was attributed to those people who didn't want to live real life.
Yes, and there were like social outcasts and all this stuff, and I think that still has problems, like the stigma of that still has problems with D&D. I don't think anyone thinks it's like associated with Satanism anymore, but
there's probably a few.
There's probably a few out there, but the majority, I think, from our experience of trying to get people to play with us, there is this very like, it's nerdy, there's this very particular, you have to be this very particular type of person to like it, and
or be able to do it.
Yeah, or it's like, it's so complicated that like, you know, I just don't have the time to invest in something like that. It doesn't interest me, and like, you know, oh, it's all like goblins and blah, 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 and it's like, it's not any of those. Yeah, like you can put, because it is, so it's a role-playing game where you are a character, and you have your dungeon master, which is like the game master, and your party, so it's the group of people you play with, so you have to be social because you have to play with other people. You can't play by yourself. So you have to play with other people, and you basically go around with your party, and you go on adventures and quests and battle creatures, and it's not that you get a set of options of what to do. You get a set of mechanics, and then you get to decide whatever you want to do. How do you want to approach this? Do you just want to like jump on into that tavern and like attack someone? You can do that if you want.
And suffer the consequences.
But there are consequences for what you do. And
I think it's a fantastic game style. Even coming from somebody who's been a computer gamer all my life.
Yes.
Like, all my life I've gamed digitally. And there's all the benefits that I talked about in computer gaming applied to Dungeons and Dragons.
Even more so, like there's arithmetic and like you have to remember all the spells and the mechanics of it and reactions and just the gameplay of it.
Real consequences. If your character dies, he's dead or she's dead, and you can't get them back. I mean, you could if you really focused on trying to get them back.
Or if your game master is like, okay.
Yeah, he could, but
he's like God in this.
Yeah, so the mechanics of the game,
say.
you have 5 or 6 people who play it once, and one of them is in control of the game. So if you were to put it in a traditional game sense, they'd be the developer.
Yeah.
They develop the whole game, they spend days thinking
They're
about
like the storyteller and everything,
world, that you can be placed in. They don't choose your choices though, so if you want them to go somewhere, they're not guaranteed to go there unless you design the game well enough that they do.
Yeah. Well, it's an excellent improv game, which is, I like when I started playing, it was like kind of scary because it was like your options were so like limitless that you're like, I'm putting limits on myself when I'm thinking, because I'm so used to like, well, what can I do? What are my rules? Anything. Ugh, like, okay. But then, after a while, you're like, yeah, I can just kind of like be myself. I'm this character, and like embodying the character and like what's the first thing that comes to mind, like go do that. Like that's not a problem. And it's really fun being able to do that and be able to embody this entirely different character than who you are, but still expressing your individuality through that character. Like I feel like we should give a little descriptor on our characters just to show you how different the character you can embody, how different it is to yourself. So
the
you
party
can go
that
first.
we play in actually involves one of my friends from Toronto too. We play online, which is something only recently that you were able to do. So it's another way of keeping in touch with other people. But so our characters, we're probably 6 foot. He's 240. He's 6'1", 240.
Yeah.
I'm 6 foot, 240 as well.
They're both the same size. Yeah.
And we're both playing halfling characters.
Like 4 foot tall little
4
guys.
4 foot tall. They're probably 60 pounds in total. And we played as a set of brothers who, went through their own hardships and came to where they are because of it.
Yeah.
In their own style too. I mean, his character is a lot of like a trickster kind of character, and mine is more of a druid, so in touch with nature and all that kind of stuff. And along with that, we've created our own identity. Where
what's your names?
Mine's Barnaby Bramblebottom.
Bramblebottom.
His is Osborne Bramblebottom. And
that's so good.
we have a joint character we call Dean Dangerous McGee. We also have an oversized overcoat that we use when he jumps on my shoulders, and we create Dean Dangerous McGee in an overcoat. That is, something that we created as a group before going into this game, and we love it. It's so fun. It's an interesting, new character that's not who you are, but
there's a little piece of you in there. Like it's still like, although it's so different from like who you are in the real world, it's so revealing of like your inner workings, because you had to come up with it and you had to be like, oh, I want to be this thing. You identify it in some way, right? It's like this creative sort of like playing with identity, because like my character, I'm a wee gal, and my character is a 6'8", 400 pound like half orc like warrior queen, who's like a gladiator, and I call her Mama Teresa, but I insist everyone call me Mama.
So in this game, that's her name, so
everyone's got to call me Mama. I love it. And I have this javelin of lightning that has the command word I have for it is yo mama. So when I throw it at someone, it turns into lightning once I say that. And it's really fun because it's like, you get to embody this entirely different being from who you are. But again, I would say I am expressing a part of my identity in this like very extravagant, creative sort of way, and I'm able to interact with people, expressing that sort of inner component of myself, of this like this like brutish character, you know, it's cool.
That gets, you know, you interact with three other people in the game, and you know the people that we're playing with all of them live in the U.S. that we've never met. But we've played with them for months now, and you know, you get their personalities and you play with.
And you get to know them and their lives, and you know, it's interesting. They're people that we would have no chance of ever interacting with unless through this game, you know.
And then even here in Yorkton, we met those two.
Yeah, there's a comic
book.
Armory. Yeah, there's a comic book shop here.
Yeah, and they have groups that come in every Saturday or every Wednesday or whatever the day is, but you know, they have their own kind of groups that they meet, and there's no way that we would have met them had it not been for this, you know, this common interaction that we have.
And immediately, you know, when we brought up, like, we're into D&D and we're looking for some handbooks to, like, look at all the monsters and all the different characters and all the rules, like, it's like, boom, they opened up, like, suddenly we had this, like, gateway of interaction and being able to, like, talk so much about this sort of like creative thing that we both, you know, mutually enjoyed. And there's this immediate sense of community in those sort of outlets. And there's so much, like, people get their character like drawn up, like fantasy commissions and like their party and like different funny scenarios that their party gets into, like people, you know, like they pay people to draw it out for them, and it just becomes this like such a fascinating outlet for friends to express themselves. Like, we definitely, I feel closer like through this kind of make-believe world. Like, it's so interesting, and it's so, I think it's like super underrated, overly stigmatized to what it is, and I think anyone can play.
It's a game of the imagination, and it really develops your own imagination as well, and it develops your, I guess, your strategizing and that kind of stuff as well. But it's unique because not only are you developing your imagination within yourself, you're expressing it to a group of people who you would never actually express it in other circumstances. So it's a very insightful to whoever you're with. You know who they are, and you get to know who they are on almost a deeper level than you would when you typically interact with somebody.
Because it's like you, with a lot of these creative art forms, and like I've talked about it with my other shows, you skip that small talk part. You skip, you know, the how's the weather and la 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 la. The filler stuff that no one really cares about, and it really doesn't show anything about the individual. And you kind of skip all that and jump into this thing that can be pretty unveiling of you and of the other people. And I love that. I love being able, let's just get into the meat of it, you know? And let's get into the meat of it in this way where it's like, you don't have to tell me all your problems and everything else for us to have this closeness, for us to have this connection. Like, let's go into this world together and let's just like have a time, you know?
No, I agree. Yeah. Often your characters are designed to be different, to be actually varied in a way that they do create conflict within each other. Like, you have alignments in the game specifically for this. Like, your alignments are neutral, good or evil, and then neutral, lawful, or chaotic.
Yeah.
And characters who are neutral, chaotic are a lot different than evil, lawful, or any other combination,
any of the combinations, right?
That will create conflict and role playing that you'll have to then deal with, or, you know.
Well, and all your stats too. Like, you know, you have to collaborate with other people because your character can't be the best at every single thing. And honestly, it's way better that way. You know, my character is not intelligent. So anything that requires intelligence, investigation, anything like that, like, it's a no from me. But I'm all like brute strength.
And you can't be knocked down. You can't be. You can go and jump over things that other people couldn't even dream to. And
yeah, and then like like you guys are more like the tricksters, like spell makers, and like like there's so much sort of like strategy and like intricate things that you do, where I'm more like Hulk smash.
Yeah,
like
exactly. Yeah.
and it's great. I love that like we all like, it's basically like you're passing like the baton to each other. You're like, okay, it's your turn now, like you do the thing, and like, oh no, I can do this. Like, it's great.
Yeah.
And then you end up doing it together, and not one person is like, I was the reigning star.
Yeah.
Like, everyone had to fulfill a role, and like everyone got to do something, and I think that's really awesome.
Exactly. Yeah. I think gaming spreading out to this kind of social gaming is really important for people, especially in the world we're living in. And I feel like, yeah, this computer gaming, I love it. I still play weekly. But the social gaming is something I'd like to get much more into. And by social gaming, I mean gaming that requires either face-to-face or an imaginative kind of congregation of a world, of everybody else's views on this world and all that kind of stuff. I'd really like to get into those kind of games a lot more.
Yeah.
Because they do have such a valuable kind of, they have so much value that they offer.
They do. They really do. And like, everyone has their like troubles and conflicts and problems in the real life. And real life, I guess your regular day-to-day life. And being able to sprinkle in those really immersive, stimulating outlets of escape that are very creative and you have to really engage yourself into, I think it just makes your life feel fuller. And it makes it better. It makes it like, it gives you that thing to look forward to, or that thing like you're like, oh, I'm really done doing work right now. Like, I just need something. Like, I don't want to take a nap. I don't want to do something like that. I don't want to do other work. Like, I just want to go and do something and just like forget about everything for a couple hours. And gaming is like fantastic for doing that.
It's wonderful that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming onto the show again and having this good casual talk. Yeah, and see you guys next week.
Thank you.
You and the thank yous.
I gotta say thank you.